Now let's come to the next question. The next question is, if an election to state legislature, if in an election to state legislature, a candidate who is declared elected but loses his deposit, it means that options are: the polling was very poor, the election was for a multi-member constituency, the elected candidate's victory over his nearest rival was very marginal, and a very large number of candidates contested the election. So the answer to this question will be option D, that is a very large number of candidates contested the election. How? Let me tell you. As I have told in the last questions also, that in one of the earlier question also, that the election we have discussed about in detail about everything about the elections. So you can go and watch my earlier videos. So here I have to tell you that, as we know that the election to the parliament, lower house of parliament especially, that is Lok Sabha, and state legislature, especially legislative assemblies. The election to both of these houses, that is lower houses, is based on first past the post system, FPTPs, and this system, voting system, first past the post system, and this system, as it is known as the winner gets the all system, winner gets the all system. In this system of election and this system of voting is you can say prevalent in India, and has been accepted in India for the election to Lok Sabha and election to legislative assemblies. It is based on proportional representation. So this is the thing, that first part, the post voting system has been accepted as a mode of election to legislative assemblies and the Lok Sabha. So in this system, what happens that the contestant getting the maximum of valid votes gets elected. So any contestant who gets the maximum vote out of the total valid vote, he gets elected. But we know that there is a provision in the constitution that if a person does not get 1/6 of the total valid vote polled, then his security deposit will be forfeited. So if a person does not obtain and does not get the 1/6 of total valid votes polled, then his security deposit in an election, then his security deposit will be forfeited by the election commission. So this is the provision. But suppose if there are large number of contestants, so if we combine this provision with FPTP voting system, then we find that in FPTP, a contestant getting the maximum number of valid votes, polled, gets elected, he gets elected. But while according to this provision, if he does not get 1/6 of the total valid votes polled, then his security will be forfeited. Let me give you an example. For example, suppose there are 100 or let me tell you, let me give a good example. There are suppose 120 valid votes polled, and there were, so the 1/6 of the 120 will be 1/6 multiplied by 120, so it will be 20 votes. And suppose there were 30 candidates in the fray, 30 candidates in the fray. So all the other candidates got some get 15, some get 10, some get 12, but one of the candidate got 18 valid votes. So according to the first past the post system, the person getting the maximum number of valid votes will be a contestant getting the maximum number of valid votes will be declared elected. So this person, he will be declared elected because he has got maximum number of valid votes polled in the election out of all the candidates. So he will be elected. But if we compare this 18 with this minimum criteria, minimum votes for a security deposit 20, then 18 is obviously less than what is required, what is 1/6 of the 120 vote, that is 20. In this case, we can say that even the winning candidate also will get his security deposit forfeited. Though he will be elected, he has been elected, he will be declared elected, he will be declared a winner, but his security deposit will be forfeited. And the primary reason for this was that there were 30 candidates, that is, there were a large number of candidates who contested the election. So then the answer to this question will be the number of contestants was very large. Now let's come to the next question. The next question is, and this question is very important because it was very much in news due to Constitutional Amendment Act, due to the Citizenship Amendment Act CAA 2019, and this had come in news. So it is saying that the power of Supreme Court of India to decide matters between the center and the states falls under its what? First, advisory jurisdiction, appellate jurisdiction, original or exclusive jurisdiction, constitutional or writ jurisdiction. We know that in India judiciaries have jurisdictions. It means authoritative area under which all those areas, all the territory under which their power is accepted. So they have jurisdiction. And if we talk about the Supreme Court of India, there are 4 types of jurisdictions. So there are these 4 types of jurisdictions, and different matters, different disputes, different cases fall under different jurisdictions. So jurisdictions, because the type of cases decides in which jurisdiction this case will fall in. So these are the types of jurisdictions. So it is asking that the Supreme Court of India, the power of Supreme Court of India to decide matters between the center and the states. So the matter may be between dispute. It is saying that the dispute may be between center and state, center on one side and states, many states on the other side, center and state on the other side, while one state or states another side, or there may be a state another side and another state the opposite side. So in all these cases it is asking that if these type of cases are there, then the power of judiciary to decide these type of dispute, these type of cases fall under the Supreme Court's what? So it is, the answer will be option C, that is original or exclusive jurisdiction, because only Supreme Court has power. Supreme Court has power to give verdicts and to decide and sit on the judgments with respect to regarding interstate or center-state disputes. And under Article 131, states can approach Supreme Court because this matter falls under the special jurisdiction of Supreme Court. So recently we know that Kerala, Chhattisgarh and many other states have approached Supreme Court against some of the matters, and some of the states have gone under CAA to appeal against the CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act, while the Chhattisgarh had gone under the a tussle of power between the center and the state. So these are the things, this is the provision. This is provision under Article 131, that under Article 131 a state can directly approach the Supreme Court only in case of any dispute with the center or any dispute with another state. So this is the thing. Now let's come to the next question. The next question is, when the Chief Justice of India, Chief Justice of a High Court acts as an administrative capacity, he is subject to. So we know that the judges may act as a judge when they sit on the benches, and to decide a dispute or to decide a matter. While when they function as, the Chief Justice of India has two functions. Apart from being the judge, he is an administrator also, administrator of the concerned High Court or respective High Court, their respective High Courts. So he functions as an administrator also, he functions as a judge also. So it is asking that when the Chief Justice of India functions as an administrator, it means with respect to its High Court, then what happens, and then he is subject to. So what is he subject to? First option is the writ jurisdiction of any other judge of the High Court. Option B is special control exercised by the Chief Justice of India, and option C is discretionary power of the governor of the state, and option D is special power provided by the Chief Minister of the state. So to know the answer obviously the answer to this question will be option A, that is writ jurisdiction of any other judge of the High Court. Though he is a Chief Justice of the High Court, but he will be under the writ jurisdiction of any other judge of the same High Court, because we know that the writ jurisdiction of High Courts is more than the writ jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, because High Courts can issue writs. There are 5 writs, we know. So High Courts can issue writs on any matter, not only with respect to fundamental rights, to protect fundamental rights, even for any matter, to any administrator or for any matter, while the Supreme Court only can exercise its jurisdiction in case of violation of fundamental rights, no other things. So this is the reason why we say that the writ jurisdiction of High Courts is bigger than the writ jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, because High Courts can issue writs for any matter and whenever. So, and we know that in the case of administration of a High Court, we know that in India judiciary, there is an integrated form of judiciary, though we are federal, but in India there is an integrated form of judiciary. Judiciary is integrated, and to provide independence and autonomy to judiciary, the administrative matters of judiciary has been immune from the executive and executive. So the administrative matters have been, you can say, immune from executive. So executive cannot interfere in the executive matters of administrative matters of the high courts. And this is the reason that a judge